Thank you for letting us take this. So, everyone, tonight we're going to turn our attention to issues connected to questions that came up from last week's discussion on evolution and creationism, and it also touches on Bible interpretation as well. And what I'd like us to do is give Kevin our attention. He will lead our discussion. If I feel like that we need more clarity and we can't just rush ahead, then I will slow us down and stop us and pause and ask for questions or clarifications, just to make sure. And if you feel like somebody's talking too quickly, raise your hand. Or if there's something you don't understand that you want to explain better, then raise your hand like this, show us your index finger so that I'm looking at everyone on the screen in the gallery. So hopefully we can be able to come to a good understanding of the issues. So the goal tonight isn't necessarily that we would all leave here believing the same thing. There are open questions here that are difficult matters, and we're going to hear about some of them tonight. But our goal is to come closer to the truth in every way, to the biblical truth, and also to truth as God has revealed it in our word, in our world. So I want to begin and just remind everyone as we turn it over to Kevin that we don't want to get feisty. We don't want to get we don't want to jump ahead of things too. So if there's something that I know Kevin's going to cover, or Kevin knows that he's going to cover that's going to come up later, we're going to say, hey, hold on to that great question. We're going to get back to it. And don't be frustrated, because we sort of have to go through the steps as Kevin's going to share them with us tonight. So take it away, Kevin.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Pastor. That's good advice in the prayer and everything else, because I am quite excited about what I've been learning actually over the last week or so. I've been updating myself with what's new in science, because what we have actually been talking about in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 weeks is really stuff that is been updated. There's a lot of updated science that we are not taken into account, and I really want to try to get us to update. But I do need to answer the questions on all the things that we were talking about last week. Like, I know that was talking about, is the earth millions of years old? What's the evidence for it? What's the evidence against it? What is kind of winning that battle, if you like, this moment in science? Also, of course, was mentioning between, it looks so obvious and it satisfies our human desire of satisfaction, if there's such a thing, that monkeys, apes, wow, they act like us. They look sometimes like us, their actions. And so it's a logical step to go from ape to man. But actually, it's a huge gap and a huge stretch. Did you know that 78% of our genes are shared with a pig? 60% are shared with a banana. So we're all made up of the same stuff. And you know that we're nearer a dolphin than a whale is, or something like that. So but the 60% and those figures I gave you are actually known. And so a pig is 80% sharing our genes. We share about it's a high percentage with the apes. Monkeys not so much, but there is also there as well. So, we can't rely on the genetic sharing or genes sharing to say that we're all related in some way or form through what we're made of in chemical.
Why is that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it could. My guess is that.
I mean, why would we be unable to rely on that? Because I didn't really hear any sort of counterpoint to why we wouldn't be able to rely on genetic similarity.
Well, as I said, we're closer to a pig than other things on 2 legs. So we can't rely on. We can't rely on.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is we cannot. What I'm saying, Martin, is we cannot rely on looks.
By looks, do you mean morphology?
I'm talking about the actual shape of us. and the familiarity we have with monkeys, and they have just, you know, they got hands, they use their arms and hands just like we do.
I don't follow the point.
What I'm saying is we can't assume that we come from those animals. We certainly, doesn't look like we came from a pig. Maybe we did. I can't rely on that either.
Well, but that's why I'm confused, because the point that you're saying that we share all these genes with pigs,
yes,
we have a lot of, according to evolutionary theory, we have shared ancestry with pigs. Mm-hmm. So we just have to go back further. So the cousin that we share is more distant. We're more distantly related to pigs than we are to other primates. But I don't see how that in and of itself, I don't see how saying that, oh, we're saying that we have the same types of genes as pigs in certain percentage as well as chimpanzees. Therefore, I don't see how that undercuts.
Okay.
I don't see how that undercuts.
I take your point. I take your point. Evolution does say, yeah, evolution is a theory that we come from the same singular cell and one cell. So we're all related in that fact. So in the perspective of evolution, yeah, you can say with that. What I was doing is really sharing what was saying. It seems so obvious, so surely it's true. That's what I'm saying. Bob was saying, it seems so obvious that we look like apes, so it's obviously true, then we must have come from, you know, it's like that next step, which is not necessarily true.
Okay, everybody stop. I want to clarify something. What Kevin is saying is that the similarity in DNA and even the similarity in amounts of DNA does not lead to a conclusion necessarily that therefore we came from one another. Another plausible explanation would be that God made from the same stuff all the different animals, including humans, including primates, according to their kind. So Kevin is making one point. Kevin, if I'm not getting this right, then
yes, you're right. Yeah.
But if I understand you, your point is our similarity in the amount or the percentage of DNA with other creatures doesn't prove anything about whether or not we came from them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the scientific evidence for that?
I'm going to go through that in a minute. But before I do that, I'll be going through that, the genetics as well in a minute. I want to, first, before I did forget something. So is that, are you okay with that, Martin, for now?
I'm still not okay. So the point that my dad summarized is correct. Like, yes, that's what you're trying to say, that you're saying that just because there's genes that are the same between species, it doesn't, that in and of itself, you're saying, is not sufficient evidence to suggest that we have
to assume,
kinship, distant cousin relationships with other organisms. Okay. I don't have to agree with any of the points. I just have to I'm just trying to understand what the point is. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Before we go on, I want everybody to think about this, maybe subconsciously or as we're talking, but don't, try and concentrate on what I'm saying as well. But it's something that I'm going to be summarizing at the end, or touching on it. And actually, as we go through, these things will come up. I want you to just think about these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points and ask yourself a question. Ask yourself, is this really what the Bible is saying? Because we're all Christians. We all believe in the Bible. The problem is Genesis is a hard one to swallow sometimes. We can become a little bit uncomfortable with what's being said there because we don't know all the things. We just don't know. But what I want to give you is if evolution is true, and these are the 5 points, if evolution is true, there were hundreds of millions of years of death in the world before Adam sinned. That's number 1. Number 2, does everybody get that? There were hundreds of millions of years of death in the world before Adam sinned.
Yes, that's a good point. I've never heard that stated before.
Number 2, The creation.
Are you saying you're assuming?
I'm not saying anything. I just want you to think about it. I'm not saying it. I'm just saying that's what it means if evolution is true. Number two, the creation has always been subject to corruption. Number three, Adam and Eve were just two hominids out of a group of hominid type creatures that predated them by hundreds of thousands of years. Number four, there are no unique created kinds since everything, and this goes back to the DNA, there are no unique created kinds since everything goes back to a common bacterial ancestor. And number five, God used evolution, which progresses through killing off the unfit, as the primary way to create everything we see. Now, my question with those is, does that reflect what the Bible teaches us? Does that reflect the historical account of Genesis and the Bible?
Could you please?
That's all I really want to, I just want to put those questions to you. We can talk about it in the summary later on, if we don't mind, because I've got things that will try to bring some of these things to light while we're talking.
Repeat point 4.
Sorry?
What was the point 4?
Point 4 was there were no unique created kinds since everything goes back to a common bacterial ancestor. We all came from one thing.
What about slime?
Doesn't matter. Same thing. Everything, every life form came from one cell life.
Okay, everybody stop. I want to point out what Kevin's doing, okay? He's saying that if you take these 5 points of evolution, that then those 5 points go against statements or truth or doctrine that comes to us through the book of Genesis and maybe other places as well. So,
yeah.
So the problem here, and I'm so glad it's been highlighted so early in the discussion. The problem is that are we going to answer science with faith, or are we going to answer science with science? In other words, here's what my friend said to me, Kevin. My friend said to me, if scientific evidence can prove that evolution is true, will you believe it? And his point is that often people will believe what they believe in spite of the facts. And I think and so I think that what I'm wrestling with as a Christian is trying to be a good scientist, but trying to be an honest and a faithful Christian. And so is it possible to take the scientific data out there that there is concerning evolution, and then be a good scientist and faithful to the science that we have, and also be a good Christian? So are you saying that that's not possible if we believe evolution?
I'm just pointing those out. I will summarize that in my opinion later on.
Cool. Well, thanks. Okay, we move on.
Yeah, because I think, as you said, it's good for people to kind of think about that a little bit. So actually, what I'm going to be doing now is, hopefully, if I get there, to show you that updated science is so far ahead of what we're talking about, apes to men, and refuting millions of years, and the fossil geological columns, and even the recapitulation that I'm going to talk about. We're so far past that, it trumps it all. And so I hope to get to the point where I have come to just last year's scientific breakthroughs, although it's been happening for 15 years and before that, because it just takes time to and data and new technologies and everything else. They've been working on this for a long time, and it's now a breakthrough. It's at the verge, and this is my opinion. Well, it's my opinion because I've seen all the evidence and all the facts that are coming through, and the acceptance without any word of contestant or challenges. It's now right at the point where evolution is about to crumble. And that brings me to a point of hypothesis. In science, when you have a hypothesis, You're not trying to prove if that's got to be like that, so I'm going to put everything in front of it to prove that. What we're trying to do is prove it in the scientific term is if it holds up to scrutiny, if it holds up to testing and experimentation. That's what we're trying to do. And good science is really joyful when we get to an answer and go forward in that direction without any sign of assumptions. And so what's happened in this world, and you touched on it there, that question by your friend, Pastor Tim, is absolutely pointed at Christians and is absolutely pointed at evolution as well. And what we're finding is both sides are doing the same thing. We're finding that some Christians will say, well, if evolution is true, oh my gosh, so we've got to fit evolution in the Bible. Otherwise, because it looks like it's true. And so, so that's a problem. And the other way as well as round is people now, and I'll show you now what's happening it's been happening for a long time. And that is this conception, this myth, I call it a myth. For example, the geological column has very little scientific evidence. Nothing was, when it was first found out or discovered, it was discovered by someone who had hardly any data, and there's no instrumentation. And so he was just made it up in his mind that this was like this by observation. And that was not stacked with experimentation. It was not stacked with, wasn't challenged. It was just accepted. And I can show that, but that's already fallen. So that's old stuff. But I just wanted to share with you that what you've said is the belief that millions of years will look after all problems, and whatever happens, Darwinian is the way, and whatever you say is, we will find the evidence for it later on. That's the same with creation. It happens the same way. We will find it later on. And it's happening on both sides. And it's a terrible thing. And it's a sad thing to watch in science when both sides are doing this. And I will show you in the depth what I mean by that. Because the paradigm, if you go to the Grand Canyon, for example, everybody goes there, wow, look how millions of years that water took to cut through all that and move all that volume. You've already made an assumption that it's true, that it's millions of years that you can cut through. Where now, and this is another part of my speech, but it's already agreed with all the top geology scientists who've studied the Grand Canyon. They're in agreement. Believers and non-believers, agnostics, believers in space travel, time travel, whatever. They all now come to the conclusion that's impossible. It did not happen in millions of years. It's too many questions. There's too many challenges. There's too many things that hypothesis is shattered.
What's your source for that statement?
Okay, this is what I'm going to go into deep discussion right now.
Do you have like a source? Because you're making a lot of statements, but I don't know if they're true. I haven't.
Okay, that's what I'm going to go into, Martin, because
I don't know what your source is for saying that.
Okay, I'll show you.
I've never heard anybody having a problem with the explanation of the Grand Canyon.
And
I don't know where you're getting. Okay. I don't know where you're getting your information from.
Okay, so I'll share that with you.
Everybody, stop.
Yes, boss.
When I call time, I need everybody to yield, because my sensitivity is that communication is not happening because we're talking over each other, or there's a misunderstanding that's happening. So I'm concerned more about the process of communication than I am what anybody actually is saying. So that's just because I'm a process person. That's not to say I'm not concerned with what everybody's saying. But hang on, I want to make some summaries of what Kevin's saying. Martin, you need to understand what Kevin's doing. He's laying out the issues. He will give us the data, the science, the sources later. But for right now, he's framing the issues up front to make it easy for us to understand where he's going. Am I correct on that, Kevin?
Yeah, you are. And I'm sorry if I'm giving my opinion because I have a bias. So yeah, I should be a little bit more neutral.
I think my primary point of confusion is that I'm not seeing where we're separating out theological arguments from scientific arguments. We're kind of mixing things together, and it doesn't really make there's a lot. I'm trying to listen to what Kevin's saying and like make notes of his points. But then like if you're gonna make a statement like the evolutionary theory is going to crumble, or nobody thinks that the Grand Canyon was made over millions of years anymore, you have to, if you're going to make comments like that, you do need to substantiate those claims with some sort of source. Otherwise,
Marty, hang on. The problem here is that you need to let Kevin lead it the way that he wants to lead it, and this is the
but
way.
Does he have a document?
Yeah, yes, honey, he's going to get there.
Can he share the source document with me?
He's going to share all that information as we go on later. Just be patient and don't question him on it on everything. Just let it pan out. Okay. All right. Because don't assume that because he said something that he doesn't have the scientific evidence to back it up.
Is there a reason why we can't just have the source document right now and look at it? Well,
no, I haven't. I'll be sharing that with you. Not the actual document. I'll be sharing something else with you. But this is where it comes from. So
go on,
yes,
Kevin.
Perhaps Tim, you're right. So what I'm saying now is just laying the ground for what I'm going to share with you.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So does everybody understand what the point that Kevin just made? His point was that his understanding of the scientific consensus is that it has changed over the last 15 years in matters connected to how old is the Grand Canyon in the United States, because many people felt at first that it would take many millions of years in order to carve a canyon so deep, but now geologists Kevin is saying, are in agreement that there must have been a very quick cataclysmic event that
I didn't say that.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You just read about it maybe somewhere.
That there must be some reason for it other than that. There's a lot of scientific consensus on that. That's Kevin's point. So the point is that over the last 15 years, assumptions that evolution was based on have been crumbling at the hands of good scientists who are coming up with differing hypotheses that seem to better explain the data of what's happened rather than the earlier evolutionary theorists. And so that's
exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Okay.
So rather than give you, I'm not going to bring out a scientific paper and say, there's where it says it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you evidence from scientific science people that you can go and read yourself, or go and see a video that they are showing their experiments and all that kind of thing. I am not going to get all the data from papers and go to the library. Whoa, that'll take me years. So I'm going to be sharing with you what I know reputable and highly reputable scientists have not only put this in, but it's been accepted and rigorously looked at. But I can tell you this from now, when I said geologists know this, the ones that have been studying this, I didn't say everyone, Martin. No one knows about it. I didn't say no one knows about it. This won't get down to the public level until 3 generations from now. I guarantee in the next 2 generations, everybody will go into that and no one will know about it. But I'm talking about the scientific community, and this is where I'm going to share with you where that comes from. Okay. And I'd like to, if possible, get a shared screen. So what I'm saying now is this, that it is impossible, and I'm going to back this up with what these scientists are saying, because I did hydraulics as well. Hydraulics was my thesis in my university, and I did random wave theory. And one of the things in there, water has such amount of strength you would not believe. But if it's running in a stream at the velocities of a stream or a very, very high flowing river, it has no ability to move that type of that even after millions of years. It cannot crack granite. It cannot cut that well. But there is a way that it can be done through water. And this is what I want to explain to you on a video right now, through top geologists who have written books and papers and everything else. So, which is
Okay, Kevin, in order for us to do this, I think I have to share the screen. No?
No. Can I share it? You should be able to give it to me. Is he listening? Can he hear?
Yeah, he can hear.
Okay. So what I want to talk about, we may as well, because we might as well fill in the time, but this is about hydraulic catastrophic cavitation. It's something that I learned at college and university as well. But what we're saying here is this: it takes a huge volume of water and a massive volume flow and masses of volume of water. And once you get that combination, I'm talking masses of volume. I don't know what the volume exactly is, but it's huge, bigger than most rivers can ever get to right now in our lifetime. As it goes over a bump, the water flows over a bump, it actually forms a vacuum at the lower end after the bump. So if the water's going that way, it'll form a vacuum here. And as the volume of the water is going at such high speed, and the volume, you're going to create a vacuum here, which oscillates between small vacuum, big vacuum, small vacuum. And what you're going to get is it's like a dynamite, stick of dynamite. It will explode. And that explosion, it will be very tiny on little bumps. If you've got a very rough concrete surface, there's lots of tiny bumps. But you'll hear a lot of the, and it will actually break through that concrete. It can even break through steel, break through granite, but it's immediate. It's not millions of years, it's immediate. And we can see that evidence in real life today. And I'm going to show you it. And we can see an evidence of a canyon-like place it's happened to, that it looks like it should be millions of years old. But we know it's only 200 years old. Oh, sorry, it's only about 80 years old within our lifetime. So this is actually real, not laboratories. This is actually showing the possibilities and great property, because it looks like the Grand Canyon. And we can show also the hydraulic catastrophic cavitation when a dam was filled up so high in near the Grand Canyon. This was north of Grand Canyon. It's called the, you can look it up. I'll give you the name. I'll give you the name later on. And we'll see it on the film. And what happens is the dam was in danger of collapsing. So what they did, they had to send off, filter off millions of tons of water. I'm talking millions of tons of water, and falling down this spillway, which was made by concrete, but it wasn't smoothed out like plaster. It was just concrete, rough concrete, steel reinforced concrete. And the water went through that. And within minutes, they think it was minutes. It took about an hour, 2 hours to go through, but they reckon this happened in minutes. What happened was these hydraulic catastrophic cavitations happened like explosions, mini explosions. They get bigger because once you've done it once, that hole gets bigger, and then you get another one, and it gets and it blows up, and it's like a blasting of dynamite, and it just rips through the whole of that concrete spillway that was through the steel, through granite, through beyond, and they had about 6,000 tons of concrete to fill the cavity. It looks like it should have been done through millions of years, but it actually happened in a few minutes. And that's what we're going to see. So this is real life stuff going here, which explains a lot of answers in the Grand Canyon, because actually, and I will give you a reference to this, it's impossible. One of the impossibilities is the river goes the wrong way. If you look at the top of one part of the canyon and you look at the top of the other part of the canyon, the river is going this way. Fair enough, because the bottom of the river is higher here than the bottom of the river here. But the originator, where it started to cut down, that level here, this is lower than this. So the original river, most probably the original river, well, definitely can't go uphill. So how can it erode this and cut this and this? It cannot be done. I'll share with you the reference of that. It's actually in the video. So it's been shown it's impossible, it's improbable, and it can't be done with water in a even a fast running stream. You can't cut through granite with water like that. You've got to have these catastrophic cavitations happening. Now, they do know that that river was flowing very, very fast with amounts of water in it, but they don't think with all the mathematics that it was enough to do that, and it couldn't be flowing uphill anyway. You can't flow uphill. But a biblical flood answers all those questions together with the sedimentation. If you put rocks, sand, other sources of clay and all those types of soils in a jar, and you whisk it like this, and then you put it down, what happens? It comes into perfect layers, just like you see in the Grand Canyon. Okay, so are we done?
I would like to add something. Cavitation, by the way, it's one of my favorite topics. Cavitation, it's easily shown on the propeller of boats, where you have underwater building bubbles, vacuum bubbles, and they can eat the propeller, even they're from steel, and it's a big problem in the maritime world.
Yeah.
So it's cavitation is well known and not so well understood.
Yeah. They also have underwater tornadoes that can pluck. It's called plucking, hydraulic plucking, where it can just draw things out very quickly.
And it's even going to the molecular realm. It's called sonoluminescence, where you have something like ultrasonic, and you make water glowing by just shaking them, the water molecules in the right speed, and it's just in a small place. It's sonoluminescence. It's one of the topics of the next 50 years, I think.
Absolutely. Okay.
And then I would like to add something. I witnessed by myself in Papua. We were there after a flash flood, and I witnessed, or I saw the impact of a flash flood. A rapid discharge is taking so much material with it that the material itself, it's grinding through the geology, through the landscape, and it can eat literally concrete, whatever. It's just grinding material away.
Yeah.
And it's taking, as you said, minutes, hours.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. And that it answers so many questions, which we'll get to in a second. So, Tim, are you there, Pastor Tim?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay, so are we going to do this? Everybody ready for this switch over? What we're going to do is leave the call.
Okay. All right. So I'm a little curious. First off, why are we talking about the Grand Canyon? And second of all, just a general statement: the Grand Canyon is not the basis for the scientific theories underlying like dating, age, like the physics and the geology behind establishing the dating of things and how long they took to develop. And so I think, yeah, I mean, if people initially got the whole Grand Canyon formation theory completely wrong, like that's entirely possible, right? You see that a lot in every field. People will do some initial investigation of a topic, and then it's usually their initial theories are all later shown to be false. So I think if we're wanting to have like a conversation of timescales and evidence for the age of old things, that's a separate conversation than talking about how the Grand Canyon was formed, right? Because like you're pointing out, there's tons of processes for weathering or physical breakdown of rocks and formation of geological phenomena, right? So yeah, it's entirely possible people get things wrong with their explanations. And science is never claiming to be infallible, and it's never, there, like we said in previous conversations, like science has many different layers of like theories, and some theories are much, much stronger than others, right? So
Marty, let Kevin lead us where he wants to. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, your point taken. This is not trying to prove the geological column. Absolutely not. What I'm doing is this actually, the teachers of Darwin himself, the two teachers that taught Darwin, his peers, I'll go into that history if you like a little bit, were two teachers who put this theory out there of millions of years. And Darwin was not a biologist. Darwin was a geologist.
But it doesn't really matter if
Hold on,
Darwin
Martin,
was
Martin,
wrong and all of Darwin's contemporaries were wrong about it. Yeah.
I'm not trying to prove that, Martin.
I know.
I'm just saying.
I'm just curious why that's the point.
Because I want to bring doubt into people's minds about science and about paradigm shifts and about the teaching of millions of years. It's all related. It's not going to prove that the rocks are 100 million years old or not. I'm not saying that is. I am just saying that basic science is not being followed.
The modern understanding of why things are old is not based on things that Darwin and his contemporaries said.
Okay, I'm going with this because I believe that it was a question that was asked about millions of years. This is one of the things. I'll get into the universe, which if we look at the latest studies on the universe and the stars and the astronomers, forget about the fossil record. It doesn't tell us anything, and I can show that and prove it. But the universe now, that later updated, which is accepted, it's been put in peer reviews. It shows that it is a young universe. Now there's obviously science for that and against it. What I'm doing here is just laying the ground of saying nothing is millions of years, and this is one of the things that says it's millions of years.
But you do understand why I'm asking the question, right? Because if you're trying to make a point that is completely irrelevant, if you're trying to use some sort of example to make a point that's not relevant, there's no way to make the point you're trying to make with talking about the Grand Canyon. That's what it seems like to me.
Then everybody ignore this if you want to, but I'm going to show it anyway.
Okay, everybody stop. Martin, stop talking, okay? Because you don't understand what Kevin's trying to do, and you need to just let him have his time to explain things. It's not yet the clarification time, all right? And he is directly from this thing that he wants to share, addressing a question that came up last week. So we take questions, and so he's addressing a question. It may or may not.
Specific question about the Grand Canyon. Okay.
Yes. So
that answers my first question, which was why are we talking specifically about the Grand Canyon? And the answer is somebody asked specifically about the Grand Canyon.
Well, I don't remember them asking specifically about Grand Canyon.
They asked a question of which Kevin's explanation of the current scientific understanding of the making of the Grand Canyon sheds light on the question that was asked. Please, everybody, stop and give Kevin an opportunity to finish. Go on, Kevin.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is play this. There's words on here as well. So
agent of erosion is very.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Catastrophic. When water flows very rapidly, like about 20 feet per second down a channel, that velocity allows vacuum bubbles to form, especially in downstream of an obstacle. The water flow going over that obstacle creates low pressure. When that pressure gets low enough, it gets to what's called the vapor pressure of water. Then water is torn open and a cavity is formed in that water. That's a vacuum bubble. And that vacuum bubble can collapse or implode.
Well, you might need to change your view.
It's next to a rock, and when it implodes, it's like dynamite. A catastrophic erosion by cavitation, this process of collapse of bubbles, is well understood by engineers, especially in spillways and tunnels.
Do we have evidence of that recently, that we've seen that cavitation at work?
One possibility is Mount St Helens. We have a 600-foot deep canyon eroded in solid rock since 1980.
There's a lot of that through cavitation?
And maybe cavitation and plucking by mud flows and high velocity flows there. Rapid erosion can create deep bedrock canyons. That's what we see at Mount St Helens. We have some modern examples like at Glen Canyon Dam,
which is just upstream.
Just upstream here, of catastrophic erosion by cavitation. In 1983, flood flows in the upper part of the Colorado River drainage basin filled Lake Powell completely, and they needed to open the spillway tunnels to allow rapid drainage of water over the top of the lake.
To save the dam.
To save the dam. And the 40-foot diameter Wright spillway tunnel was opened, and water went down this inclined 40-foot diameter tunnel, and it burrowed out through the concrete and the steel. 62,500 cubic feet of concrete was needed to fill this cavity that formed.
How long did it take for that to...
They think it took minutes for cavitation to erode that bedrock.
So just like butter, like a knife through hot butter.
Explosion-induced catastrophic erosion. We even felt earthquakes during the time, and the water spilling out of the tunnel was seen to be red. So it was obvious that...
Okay, so that was just one of those. I'd like to share you now something that looks like the Grand Canyon that happened in our lifetime, and it happened in over a few weeks, but it looks like it should be done over millions of years. Let me share that with you. Can you see the new video there?
Yep.
Yep, okay, so I'm going to start this. It's only about 1 minute.
You know, I grew up in country like this. My dad and I would ride our horses up to these amazing high mountain lakes. We'd ride back into some pretty remote wilderness areas with incredible streams and meadows and wildlife. I love it here. Look at this canyon. It reminds me of the Grand Canyon. You've got this little stream, you've got these steep canyon walls. How long do you suppose it would take for a stream this small to remove this much material and cut the canyon this deep? This rock has a history, just like I do and just like you do. It came from somewhere. A lot of these rocks have been dated to be 350,000 years old, up to 2 million. That's pretty old. But it might surprise you to know that all of the geological formations that we see here, the canyons, the layers, even the plants, are younger than I am. When I was born, there was nothing here but a vast forest, hundreds of feet below where we're standing right now. In fact, before 1980, most people had never even heard of Mount St Helens. It was in that year, on May the 18th, that molten rock created a steam blast with a force of 20 million tons of TNT. Avalanche debris and other flows from the eruption laid down all of those layers rapidly, up to 600 feet thick. A couple years later, there was some more volcanic activity that created a mud flow that cut out this entire canyon. It also cut through deep bedrock, all in a couple days. Isn't it amazing what a little bit of information from the past can do to help change your view of the present and the present world around you? There are a lot of assumptions made by a lot of people about the history of the earth around us. The question is, how do those assumptions affect how we view that history? But more importantly, how do they play into how we view science and the Bible? Did God create the world in a few days or billions of years? Is mankind descended from apes Or did God create us instantly in his image? Was there a global flood that destroyed the earth? Or is that a myth? In other words, is Genesis history?
How long it lasts, we don't know, but it suddenly terminated with Adam and Eve eating of the tree of the knowledge good.
Sorry. Okay, so I'll stop sharing now. I hope that actually answers a little bit of your question, Martin, because that's why I was doing it, is to trying to relate it to the Bible, the Genesis history, because if we're reading history in a certain way, that's what we were talking about before. And so I'm not going to form an opinion on that. Everybody else can form their own opinion on it, but and see, I'll send you the video link to that, because there's a whole long story about Genesis there and a lot more to it.
We're going to start by clarifying what has been shared through the video. My understanding of the point that's being made, Kevin, is this. So my understanding of what it's been shared through the video is that we now know that there can be all kinds of differences in sedimentation and in the carving of large canyons that happen in minutes, days, or weeks, rather than think that everything that we see that's big and grand and carved out like the Grand Canyon is something that needed millions of years to be created. So is that your point?
Yes, yeah.
I think the point is a little disingenuous, and my reason, I don't need to talk about it. I think that the point in that video is disingenuous.
Why?
Because they're talking about how people have underlying assumptions, but and then they're using an analogy by looking at how some people made some assumption about how long it took for the Grand Canyon to be formed, and that assumption was incorrect. But those are not the assumptions underlying the dating methods that we have. So the Grand Canyon has nothing to do with why the Grand Canyon is not some linchpin in any argument for dating anything. So if there was bad science in the past and people didn't have information, they made assumptions, and then they did investigation and found like, oh, well, cool, cavitation rapidly did more erosion. Cool. So that's perfectly fine. Like, I think it's like science being done, bad ideas, incorrect hypotheses being thrown out, and the process continues, right, of research. So I think it's a good.
This doesn't have any relationship to questions dealing with dating, origins,
no,
or
it's
the
not meant
theory
to.
of evolution.
It's not meant to.
Okay.
No.
If it's just about the fallibility of scientific theories, then of course, any scientific theory could be shown to be incorrect if new data comes.
That's right. Yeah,
that's
the point. That's the point.
Yes.
And if you take it like that, that's the point. No problem.
Okay. Now I understand. I understand the point. I was just trying to figure out what the point was.
One of the things I want to point out is hypotheses, and I'm going to make general statements here, so I'm going to back them up. The evolution theory, or sorry, let's take any hypothesis. Any hypothesis, scientific hypothesis, is made. I could make one right now. I could say, well, I believe that a clown, dressed as a clown, a person in the middle of the earth, in the middle of the center of the earth, dressed as a clown, put his fist through the earth's crust and put the stars in place with his hand and the moon and the sun. That is a hypothesis. Of course, I'm really going out on the edge here. That hypothesis can be refuted within a second by a scientist, and everybody agreed that that is crazy. All right? So it cannot happen. It's not just crazy, it's scientifically easily squashed. Okay. So a hypothesis, it doesn't really matter what a hypothesis is, as long as you can think it's a hypothesis. Of course, scientists are not going to waste anybody's time in doing that, but I'm just making a point. So a hypothesis comes about. You make a hypothesis. Now, in science, if there is unending, continuous, serious contesting and challenging that with scientific evidence, that something's wrong with it, or not something, just not something wrong with it because we're trying to prove one way or the other, which if it's right or wrong. But there's scientific evidence that shows one way, and this is trying to say it goes another way. Then we have to just take that down. That hypothesis is taken down. You can't have continuous, because as Martin said, science is infallible. I mean, it's fallible. It's mistakes are made, experiments go wrong. Someone put a hair in there and it looks like something else. You know, there's so many things can go wrong. So you're going to get mistakes now and again, and that's obvious. But when you get continuous upgrades, continuous, not just upgrades, but continuous challenges, and this is what science is. You make a paper, it goes in, and people start to challenge it. But you've said this now, and that's not, and so it gets challenged, it gets contested, and that's when people really go into it, and the scientific establishment makes a decision. Well, hold on, you can't go into this edition of the geographical whatever scientific journals. So, unfortunately, there are. I mean, I have here over 100 challenges. Scientific, I've got all the scientific papers on here that are challenging evolution all over in every aspect of it. And I'm going to go through a few of them now. And just to let you know, this is 10, 15 years old. It's been the same argument for the last 10, 15 years. This has been trumped by updates, which I'll share with you later. But I just wanted to go through with you because this is a hypothesis that has never ending challenges scientifically. And it's the only one that's having so many those challenges for years and years and years. So much so that scientific books have to be changed every a few years. And so it really is it's now known that just like Christians, we have a belief, and we have a strong belief in the Bible. And so what we are going to do, some people will discount science and go, oh no, the Bible says this, but that might be a wrong interpretation. So Christians are doing this as well. But scientists on the other side, on evolution, many scientists are saying things like, and I'll give you a proof of this very soon, that, well, we understand and your experiment is 100% irrefutable. It goes into the journals, everything else, blah, 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 blah. But there's silence from the establishment. And the questions come, one of the questions that I'll show you, the person who did this, who was an diehard evolution until he does his own test in the geological scaling, and found out some very big errors there, that he discovered for himself that it wasn't so, and he's done a lot of studies, and I'll go through the books with he's written and a slide presentation in a minute. And he said he wrote these, and they've all passed through until this is last year, latest update, and it just shows, it actually proves that evolution cannot be happening. Cannot be happening. Okay, I'm going to share with that. I believe it proves it, and he does. And everybody he's talked to, well, everybody, no one's talking to him, and he's phoned up his friend. I'm not going to show you this on the video, so I'm just telling you. He showed up and he called his friend and said, Peter, I've sent you pre-published books of my theories. Did you read them? And his friend eventually said, John, he said, yep, I read it twice. And it's totally irrefutable. What you put down there is absolute science, and it shows what you said. And then John said, well, what's going to happen? Why are the establishments not getting back to me? My other colleagues, why are they not getting back to me? He said, John, they don't know what to do with it. They just do not know what to do with it. But I'll tell you this, John, we are 100% sure that Darwin's right, and we'll just wait. Now if that's not belief and a faith, I don't know what is. And that's exactly what's happening in the scientific world now. And there's not just one example. There are many, and I'll send you videos, I'll send you books, I'll send you all the references so you can work it out yourself if you want to, or read it yourself. I would recommend you listen to this person, because he was a diehard atheist and a diehard an atheist. He didn't say a diehard atheist. He's an atheist and was a diehard evolutionist. But he had problems with it. And then he mentioned these problems to other evolutionists. And he said, and they basically said, yeah, we don't want to voice this out too much because it's going to put some doubt on Darwin, and we believe in Darwin. Now that to me also sounds like there is a lot of this going on both ends of the story in Christianity and in evolution, creation science and evolution science. And it's not science anymore. And I'm going to share with you, if I get to the update, this has taken way too long right now, so I may not get to that assumption. Hopefully I can.
Hey, Kevin, stop for a minute. As one who has preached for more than 30 years of my life, you will only cover 1/4 of what you prepared. And so you've just got to accept that and go slow enough so that we can follow it. And so it's not that it took longer, it's that you didn't understand how much time would be necessary in order to bring clarity out of the points that you had, because you're living in your brain rather than all of our brains. So if we need more time in order to finish it, then we'll take it. But don't get under a time crunch. Okay, we just want to hear it. And so far, I think we've brought everybody along. We see the issue. We understand how the Grand Canyon fit into it. And now you've just made an important point that I think everybody understands, which is that there is a faith behind science that isn't necessarily rooted in the facts of science. That's your point, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then continue.
But some scientists are very biased. That's the
that's it. Yeah, right. And okay, so, but there are some. I mean, science is just a wonderful subject, and you're right. It's not every scientist for sure, and there are some pure scientists, and it doesn't matter what their beliefs in. They will go with science and rejoice when there's a movement progress forward to whatever conclusion, that's the beauty of science. It should be. Okay, so what I want to do now is go through those questions that did come up last week about things like apes to men. So I'm going to read this out to you because it's been refuted to me, it's very obvious, but obviously I'm biased, but I didn't used to be. So, okay, so did ape men exist? Most people seem to have been persuaded that they did, having seen detailed reconstructions of those supposed ancestors of ours, and are not aware that many of these so-called ape men were later shown to be either frauds or mistakes, and we'll go into details. We all know that there is nothing between apes and men living on the earth today. That's well known. We all know that there's nothing between apes and men living on earth today. One of the criteria used in assessing the status of fossil remains in the brain capacity, assuming at least part of the brain case has been preserved. When we consider the estimated brain sizes of our supposed ancestors, we find that the same division between ape and men appears to have always existed. And then there's a table here of comparative brain size. I don't know whether you can see that, but I'll explain it to you. There's never been an ape or a gorilla have found anywhere ever that has a bigger brain size than 500 cc's. And there's never been a brain size found in humans less than 750. Now you might find that gap very small, maybe, because what you're basing it on is just your own thoughts. But that gap is huge to break through.
So stop, Kevin. We don't understand what the facts are establishing. Can you say in one sentence or two sentences what are you trying to prove, or what's your point?
So the point is here that there is no link between a human brain, a human, and the gorilla, the ape species.
On the basis of brain size?
Absolutely. But that's one of the factors, yes.
But
a very important factor.
I'm confused by that because no one's saying that we evolved from gorillas in science.
Great.
We evolved from a shared ancestor, right?
Okay, so there we go. So I'll go through this because it does explain that in a minute. And so we've got Aborigines and Pygmies of 750 cc's. But the majority of Homo erectus is 1,000, going up to 1,500, going up to even to 2,000. But there's no other animal on this earth with a brain size of that capacity. Let me read through. So the name, I'm not even going to try and name it. Australopithecus, meaning southern ape. It's called a name anyway. The name southern ape has been given to a number of skulls and parts of skeletons found mainly in Africa, and evolutionists have hotly debated what place, if any, these creatures had in human evolution. Most textbooks place them in our family tree and often label them ape men. However, most authorities are now of the opinion that they were not on the direct line leading to modern man, partly because their fossils have been found alongside those of true men. Robert Leakey has written ape men was probably a knuckle walker, not an erect walker. Mention must be made of one famous ape man named, or supposed ape man, named Lucy. Donald Johanson, who found the skeletal remains, claims that this creature walked upright and was our direct ancestor. This claim is based on a knee joint, which Johanson claims was similar to a human knee joint, but when pressed, he admitted that he had found it about 1 mile away from the main skeleton and over 200 feet lower in the strata. When we consider the brain size, the cranial capacity of the ape man, we find that it was around 500 cc, similar to that of the average gorilla. So the term southern ape means to be a fitting description. Homo habilis is the name assigned to fossils, remains of creatures with a brain size of about 800 cc. Remains of tools have been found associated with these fossils, leading evolutionists to claim that they represent a stage when our ancestors discovered how to use tools. Here we will mention skull 1470. It's a name of the skull. When Richard Leakey discovered it in 1973, he claimed it would challenge all ideas about human evolution. Either we toss out the skull or we toss out the theories of early man, he wrote. It simply fits no previous models of human beginnings. One of the reasons for Leakey's startling statement was that the skull 1470 had a surprisingly large brain case, 800 cc in fact, and had been dated as being 2.8 million years old. The problem was that according to the popular views of man's evolution, such a large-brained creature should not have existed so long ago. However, despite Leakey's bold claims, skull 1470 did not cause a revolution in evolution ideas. This skull appears to have been too much of a challenge for the evolutionists to face, and it was since been redated at 1.8 million years old and simply lumped together with fossils of Homo habilis. However, the point to note is that a brain size of 800 cc is within the range found in modern man. Ape man and pygmies, although fully human, can have a brain about size 750. So there is no reason to suppose that the fossil belonged to an ape man. The fossils known as Homo erectus, which include the Java man and the Peking man, have brain sizes of around 1,000 cc, well within the range found in human beings living today. Whilst Neanderthal man, the original hunched back ape man of books published earlier this century, actually had a brain size of 1,500 cc, larger than the present human average of 1,400 cc. Interestingly enough, of the earlier skeletons, the Neanderthal man has now known to have been deformed due to rickets or arthritis, which gave them a hunched appearance. So when we compare all the facts, we find that all the fossils of our supposed ancestors can be classified as either apes or men, there being nothing between 500 cc and 750 cc Aborigine. There never were any ape men, simply apes and men as now. However, it should be noted that brain size alone is not reliable guide to intelligence. Rather, it is the type of brain. The human cortex is not only far bigger than of any animal, but it has a much larger uncommitted area, which is free for the higher mental processes that separate us from animals. In this alone, there is an inseparable gulf between the smartest ape and the least intelligent human being. This is just what we would expect on the basis of what the Bible says and the man's origin. So there is no such thing as anything that's found as the missing link of ape to man or of any descendants of those to man. That's what the point is.
Everybody understand that Kevin's point here is that in science, we don't have the evidence that there is a link, that what they call the missing link, that would allow a transition between apes and humans. And this one fossil that they thought was the missing link actually wasn't. That's your point, right?
Yeah.
Getting back to our discussion on humans descending from apes, the point that's being made is that the scientific evidence out there in the fossils doesn't substantiate it. So,
yeah, that's
questions
right.
and comments?
Yeah, I just want to confirm that the Earth's age is not millions of years, right?
We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah,
We're not there
current
yet.
scientific theory is about 4 billion years or so. That's the scientific theory.
That's one scientific theory.
We'll get there.
That's the general consensus right now, is that it's
not anymore.
Around 4
We'll talk
billion
about
years.
that, Martin. It's not anymore.
I mean, Kevin seems to have a mysterious source where all of the consensus of the scientific theories is always
no, not
being
all.
proved
There's a
wrong,
split.
that he still
No.
hasn't shared with me.
Don't misquote that, Martin. I'm not saying all.
But I just have one question. What is the source of the document you're reading? That's all.
Well, this one. Okay, so this is references of Bowden, Ape Men Fact of Fallacy, Sovereign Publications, Leakey and Science News, Jordan's in a lecture, University of Minnesota, Missouri.
What's the title?
Leakey,
do you have the link?
National Geographic. This is a sheet by Creation Resources Trust in UK.
So it's a biased publication, and it's a compilation of sources. So it's like a research paper.
So in science, we don't say bias. We say it's science. In science, you don't say bias.
So it's a creationist publication, and it's a collection of things, like a research paper, basically.
You'll
right? Like
never get, okay, true, but you'll never get an evolution doing this, saying this. Never. Never, never.
Well, I'm still just trying to figure out what is the source called. Do you have the
specific so that's the source.
title that you can just paste?
Yeah, I'll send that to you.
Just send a photo or
I will send the whole thing to you, okay?
Okay, stop, everybody. What's happening here is, and Marty, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it looks to me like Martin's trying to undermine what Kevin has just said by saying two things. By saying, number one, your sources may not be as credible as you think, and number two, what you're saying is scientific consensus is not necessarily scientific consensus. Now, Marty, is that true?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to ignore anything I'm saying. Like, I don't need it, all my random comments to be addressed or anything like that. I'm just thinking out loud. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what the source is, and I'm bringing up bias because the point about bias was made previously. So, the bias issue is an issue for all researchers at every level of every opinion. It's just a fundamental issue.
So I think, Kevin, that there is an issue here that there's an elephant in the room, and Martin is riding the elephant, okay? and the elephant is pooping on the conversation. So I want to talk about the elephant in the room. And so what the elephant in the room is the question on was the science or the science that used to be there that talked about a missing link correct? And my understanding is that your sources say no, it wasn't correct. There is no missing link. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, there's absolutely no proof of it.
Okay, so then, Martin, I have to ask you at this point, where are your sources that might say something differently?
Well, I need to understand what you mean by missing link, because there's not actually expected one, like there's not just one link. There's many transitional fossils. So establishing the timeline of the species evolution and morphology, you know, there's like thousands and thousands and thousands of fossils. So we're not looking for any one missing link in particular. The issue is that we are always looking for more fossils. So whenever we find another skull at another date, and then then it becomes, oh, well, but where's the link between this one and that one? Then we look for the link between this one and that one. And then, oh, well, where's the link between this one? So it's like we're trying to fill in the continuous stream of reality with a record, a fossil record that's not, or at least the fossils that we have found so far is not a continuous stream, like, you know, time and all the years, because it's over a very long period of time. That's the assumption, or at the very least there's a lot of dirt to dig up and a lot of fossils to look for, right? A lot of transitional species to find. So I don't have a problem with anything that Kevin was saying. Like, if there was erroneous conclusions made about fossils in the past, jumping the gun, like, oh, we have found the transitional link, like there's not gonna be just a few number of transitional species. There's gonna be many like ancestral species, and there's gonna be many like cousin species which either were reabsorbed or died out or whatever. So I didn't really have any issue with anything that like there was no, I don't think science has any problem with anything that was in that article. I'm just want to make sure we all understand, like, we're not looking for a single fossil. We're looking for thousands of fossils, millions.
Yeah. And that brings up a very good point, because the actual point I was making, that one has been found which was disputed, and there should be thousands. There should be thousands. Since Darwin died, there's been millions and millions of fossils being found, and there's been none that have found, as you said, there should be thousands, but none has been found. Surely by now we would have. That's the doubt we've got to put in there, because surely by now we would have found them. They're not there. They haven't been found. Now, they may be a faith. Okay, I shouldn't say that. They may be saying we're going to find them at some stage, but they haven't been found. That is a huge point in science.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Are we looking for a fossil that has a specific volume of space for the brain?
We are looking for evidence that there is a gap between ape man, if you like, from our descendants to man, and there is absolutely no proof whatsoever.
There's
no evidence.
No proof of what?
No evidence, evidence. No evidence of the gap between supposed descendants of man to man itself. Whether it's from pigs, apes, wherever, it doesn't matter. There's never been any evidence of such. It's a we will find it one day, because it's true.
I'm not well versed enough in all of the fossils that we have now to know if what you're saying is correct or not. So it's a.
But if we ask ourselves, if we both ask ourselves that question as human beings and scientists, surely if that had been found, or thousands have been found, it would be big news.
Well,
We have found.
the fundamental thing that convinced me about evolution wasn't the fossils, any specific fossil that is being found. One of the underlying thing that convinced me was the genetics.
Okay. So well, I mean, there's got to be some evidence, and you know, you can say that the thing that you thought.
I mean that we're still like I think you can't make an assumption that we would have already found the evidence, because we might be able to find those fossils, and we might not be able to, because there isn't necessarily a guarantee that everything gets fossilized. So there's gonna be holes in the fossil record. I think that's the issue you're pointing to. There's holes in the fossil record. 100%.
If you can accept that possibility that nowhere in the world, out of millions and millions and millions and millions and millions, are we finding that. So if you really believe that, okay, everybody's going to have to take this evidence.
Well, but Kevin, my point is that the amount of time we've been looking for specific fossils is pretty short. So to say that we should have found certain things already, I don't think is I don't necessarily think it's perfect logic, because because it's possible that we missed things, and it's possible that we haven't found things yet. So but I completely agree that there's plenty of holes and gaps in the fossil record. So that point, and there's certain species we still need to find. There's certain fossils we still need to find. I think both those are really good points for both sides to, agree to. But that's
so wait, Marty. So what you're saying is that if we don't find them, then the theory that there's trying to establish is not true?
No, I'm saying that you can't say that because we didn't find something, therefore it calls the theory into question. But it does put some doubt, like, oh, maybe we got some things wrong. But my point is that it's possible we haven't found the fossils yet. It's possible that certain ancestral connections are in a different order than we thought, but it's even, I would venture to say it's much more likely that we just simply haven't put enough research funding and done enough expeditions and dug up enough fossils yet to find enough fossils to have a very filled in fossil record to the point that would satisfy certain people. And
okay, so stop. Yeah. So then the issue then becomes, why do we accept something that's called a theory as a fact in the absence of the evidence that would be necessary to substantiate it? Isn't that the issue, Kevin?
That's one of them. Yeah.
We don't call theories facts. I've never heard a scientist ever talk about. I've never met any disingenuous scientists in my life, and I've met atheists and agnostics.
They exist on both sides.
I've met Christians, agnostics, and atheists who were scientists, and they all seemed to be doing their utmost to be as careful with their wording and as nuanced as they possibly could be, and as upfront about like what info we have, what info we don't have. So I agree. There's holes in the fossil record. There's potentially issues with the current like assumptions of like what's cousins with what and how long ago and what fossils are break off points and all that jazz. But I think like we still have a lot. I'm just saying I think we have a lot more fossils to dig up, because just over the past 10 years we have found so many more interesting fossils that we didn't have before. I think there's still so many more to find. That's my only.
Okay. And that's a good, that gives me another leads on to the next thing, actually, is about the facts. As you said, in science, you've got to really, especially outside what we can't see and observe ourselves, there is no such thing as facts. In fact, the term in science is highly improbable. In layman's terms, that's impossible because we're talking in many, you don't say highly improbable unless it's virtually cannot be done. Because if we say it's 1 in 0.00000000000000000001, it's still possible, right? But what highly improbable means in science, you're flipping a coin for say 1,000 times, and you at 10 a heads comes up every time. Now, if you did that, if I flipped a coin 10 times, and I said, what is it? Heads, 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 10 times. You're going to start to think. You have an intelligence that will give you, there is something wrong here. If you did it 100 times and it came up heads, you're going to say, well, at least 10 times even, you could say, that is a fake coin, or that is a loaded coin. And so when scientists say highly improbable, they're really meaning in layman's terms, impossible. Now, I haven't said that occurred here. I'm not saying that at all, Martin, no. So yeah, it's a good point because there's always possibilities. And that I will be coming to that kind of thing later on, but I'm not going to shorten this. I'm not going to waver from my thing. I'm going to continue on the thing. And if you want to continue next week, we'll have to, but if not, it's the end. So are we okay to go on?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Kevin, you've got about 7 weeks worth of stuff. Okay. And we have about less than 7 minutes left. And so, we've got to take this in chunks, one by one, by one. And so this is always the challenge of leading a discussion rather than just giving a monologue lecture. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the advantage of a discussion is you bring people along, you understand what the issues really are, and then you try and take your preparation and then repackage it to speak to the needs and the issues of the people that are there. That's student-centered learning rather than teacher-centered learning. But it's often frustrating for the person who's prepared a lot because they always have a feeling like, I didn't get through my content. Kevin, we're going to give you the time that you need to finish things, but it's not going to happen tonight because it's already 9 o'clock. So what we're going to have to do, what we're going to have to do is see the advantage of what we've been taken through tonight, and then we're going to summarize it in terms of all the main points. And right. I think so. We're building. Rome wasn't built in a day. Evolution wasn't understood or knocked down in one night. And so let's not get frustrated. This has been helpful. It has clarified where some of the issues are. So I want to start from where we're at right now and move backwards. My understanding of what you just clarified, Kevin, had to do with the fossil records. And everybody, the fossils are the bones that we have that form the historical record that then we as human beings try and recreate to understand what the fossil was and where it appeared and at what time it appeared. And so there's many questions that are raised every time we find an old bone someplace. So Kevin, I want you to summarize in 2 sentences, what is the point of your understanding of the fossil record with regards to apes becoming humans? What was your point that you were trying to make by talking about Lucy?
Yeah, talking about Lucy. And the point is that that the crucial, which I believe, and many scientists believe, it is a crucial point to show that when we put facts in and this is another point, Martin, that real scientists, as you say, would not say facts, but it has been put in scientific education that we are fact derived from apes. And that is a real tragedy in the education world. Now, I don't
Kevin, that sentence was way too long with way too many dependent clauses. I need you to say something in one propositional statement. So
Well,
just
it's difficult to do that.
well, you've got to do that. I mean, because you went off on a sideline tangent in the middle of that.
It's very
that
difficult.
sentence.
It's
So
very difficult
so I'm
to do
saying
this.
we're dealing with first. I have a PhD
Okay.
and you lost me. So I
But
want you.
it's hard, man.
Okay.
It's hard.
It's tough.
Tell
Okay,
me,
so I will
what
say
are you
it
trying-
in one sentence. That the reason I brought this up is just to share with you, as I said in the beginning, there are literally hundreds of challenges to the evolution theory, and a hypothesis shouldn't have those proven. I mean, not proven. Have these so many challenges that are disputed and not being put away. And so a hypothesis
Okay,
shouldn't have all these.
stop. I need to
That's
clarify
my
that
point.
because just the way you said it, I think I understand what you're saying, but most people listening aren't going to understand what you said. Your point, if I understand it, is this: that if this was a legitimate hypothesis, then there would not be so many concerted challenges against it. So
Continuously, yes.
Continuously. So you're raising the question of then why are people still holding to it? Is that correct?
Yes, and I'll bring that up, and I'll give you an answer to that as well in the summary.
Well,
Yes,
give us
true.
the answer right now in one.
That's true. Yes, yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So what is the answer to the question? Why are they doing it? Why are they
Because
not
there is
doing a 180 turnaround when all this contesting articles contested? Why are they not then turning around on certain key points?
Yeah, well, that is because, and it's been found to be, that there's a belief that it's true, and they will, as Martin said, they will find something eventually. They're waiting. It's a waiting game.
Okay. The value of this is tremendous. Okay, because if what Kevin is saying is correct, then we have something that's being taught as a theory, taught as a fact that actually is a theory based upon a hypothesis where the evidence for it either isn't there yet or has been contested. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think, yeah, like in some sense that like that's the gist of it, right? But then you'd have to look at each specific challenge that Kevin's talking about, because there have been a lot of these challenges that have been explained or addressed. So
Okay.
I'd have to, like, I can't agree to some, I mean, obviously we don't need to agree to the point, but the, like, for all the, like, like the scientific method is based on developing hypotheses, doing research, and coming up and finding data, right? So over time, the resolution of our theory, like how much data we have and how detailed we understand it, is going to develop over time. And I think we're still pretty early on in that process. So I think that, yeah, there's going to be lots of issues that come up, lots of criticisms of some of these fundamental assumptions. So yeah, like there's the issue of bias, there's the issue of dealing with assumptions, and there's the issue of the process of getting more data to make things, to fill in the gaps of the information that we have. So yes, I think that's a perfect explanation of the scientific method. It's not some certain it shouldn't be some certain dogmatic perfect thing. It's a process. There are holes in things. There's a lot of qualifying statements. So beware of very certain and highly biased ideological atheist scientists. Sure, that, is a really good point, right?
Okay, guys, I need to try and frame this. Kevin, you've got more details, and then I've got trumpets. And that's a lot of trumpets and that's a lot of details. So what we need to leave here, though, with is the conclusions tonight from that, or the questions. And I think the most important thing that we can walk away from here tonight with is two questions that we haven't directly, you've touched upon it in the Lucy thing that you mentioned, but there's two questions that I think exist in his mind and in the minds of some of the rest of us as well. And so maybe for next week, you can focus it on these two things. Number one, what fossil evidence is there or isn't there about about the jump between apes to humans? You know, why do the evolutionists think it or believe it if there's no evidence there? What is the evidence? You know, is it just one fossil of a deformed person who had arthritis and was bent over, or what's the deal here? So that's the question that everybody comes back to is what is the evidence that we descended from apes? And you mentioned stuff about the DNA, that the DNA and even a comparison with the DNA isn't conclusive, because we can be made up of the same gunk, but it's formulated in different ways so that you have the categorization of species and not necessarily a connecting link between all of the species, if I understand your point. So the issue that we still have to have clarified is where is this all coming from that we came from apes? That's the first question. And then the second question has to do with the dating of the earth and the issues connected to that. So next week, when we go into the study, can you address those two main things? Because I think for the sake of our common conversations with most people, as evolution becomes a challenge to faith or an obstacle for some people to come to faith, those are the two issues that we have to, as Christians, have some idea of why it is that supposedly science thinks this. Maybe they're mistaken, but we have to have an answer. The Bible says we have to give in the writings of Peter, it says we have to be willing to give a reason for the hope that is within us. Well, that hope that we have is a hope that needs to be held on to in the midst of this ongoing dialogue and discussion between creationists and evolutionists, or you could say between atheists and Christians, even though that many of the people who are now following evolution might say that they were Christian. Okay, so my point is that for our intents and purposes of what do we need to get out of a discussion like this, it is talking points first of understanding, so that when we have a conversation with an evolutionist, we know what the issues are and where to frame, you know, trying to, shall we say, win the discussion if what we're trying to do is present a reason why it is that we think that our faith hasn't ditched our mind. We didn't put our mind in the sand when we came up with our faith. We embraced facts of history and we embraced good science. We didn't jettison it. Are you following me?
Yes. Can I just make a summation
Yep.
or comments on that? So already, I remember saying this way back when we were starting this conversation, or started this study line, and that is this. This has been going on for 150 years. And I can bring in scientists, just over. I can bring in scientists, and Martin can bring his top, because Martin says, you know, I'm not a scientist I'm not a origin of life scientist, or even a biologist. This has been going on. Both sides can, as Martin says, there is an answer for this. They have an answer. When I say they, I'm talking about evolution scientists will have an answer for this. They'll have an answer for this. They'll have an answer for this. They'll have an answer for this. And in the eyes of evolutionists, it'll be satisfactory. In the eyes of creationists, it won't be. But we'll be here forever if we do that. And I don't believe we should be doing that. It really is no point, because of this. This argument is stuck in a whirlpool in 15 years ago. There has been so many updates that will trump all of that. And that's why I call, and it's going to be a derogatory remark for Dawkins, Dinosaur Dawkins. Dinosaur Dawkins, as I call him, has the same arguments 15 years ago. He's a brilliant man, and he's written some tremendous books about the adaptation of the variations and natural selection within the kind, and some wonderful books of that. But he's not updated 100% with the physicists, astrophysicists, because astrophysicists has 2-3 years ago. This is up to date, which will actually prove that evolution cannot be so. Okay, so do you want to go through all of this? I can, but this is pointless because evolutionists, evolutionists will come up with, oh, we've disputed back again. And it's just go back and forth like a tennis game, you know, and it's just, it will be on your belief. It'll be on your belief in what the Bible, you interpret the Bible, because that's questionable as well, and what the interpretation of the evolutionists say as well. So we're going to be not going anywhere in that sense.
I think things can be boiled down to some key points and arguments, though.
Well,
I don't think it's an never-ending conversation.
Already, Pastor Tim has indicated the paradigm is so strong. Indicated this, Pastor Tim, you said this. Well, why is it that science has now believed it? Science is saying this. Well, science is not saying that. That is now a very wrong statement. Science is saying both things, and there is disagreement. So science is not saying that the evolution is true. There is now so much evidence, and also next week, if I bring you up to date, whenever I can bring you up to date, I will bring you up to date where atheist scientists are coming out and saying, I'm true, my heart is with science, and I'm not going to let my atheism affect it. And so they're coming out and they're saying, wow, they have now a scientific hypothesis that finally is accepted and includes, I say it includes God. They don't use the word God, they use the words intelligence and design and a fine tuner and those kind of things. So it's beginning to, even Dawkins has dropped the primordial soup, has dropped the single cell has come from nothing, from chemicals.
Okay, stop. So your point is that if we want to have intelligent discussions about the obstacles to faith that an atheistic person would have because of their supposed belief in evolution, or a sincere scientist would have that's been exposed to 15 years ago data concerning evolution, that one of the starting points for the conversation, everyone, is the fact that science has updated itself in the last 15 years so that many scientists do not any longer hold to some of the main tenets of evolution. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that it's not being challenged, or contested. It's not being challenged or contested. It's gone through all the periods.
What is the it? It's not being
contested. The scientific evidence, what I'm talking about, has not been contested. It's put into peer reviews, peer publications.
The scientific evidence for what?
For
intelligent design,
intelligent design, age of the Earth, age of the universe, etc. From astrosciences.
Can you just give us a links document with all of your sources? You've mentioned a lot of sources or people who have come out, or like you're saying, new research.
Because that's my summary.
Yeah.
When I update you,
can you just make a document and just paste in all your links, and we can read any books or journals or anything?
Yeah,
that's required.
But I want to go through it. I want to explain it to people. I want to go through it, explain it to people if possible. I've made statements because that's what I was asked to explain where we're going with this.
Okay, yeah, but I don't really need explanation. I can read the articles. I can read the accounts. I can read very fast, so I can read the books you're talking about. I can read the articles. I can read the journals. I can read the blogs and all that jazz. So I'm very curious about what you're saying, because my news feeds have not made me aware of some of these things that you're saying, and I think there's a lot of interesting new research that you're talking about, and I just like all the links for it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so guys, we have to end. But the key talking point that Kevin's saying that we need to keep open when we're dialoguing with evolutionists or when we're dialoguing with atheists who believe the theory of evolution is that modern science has overturned some of the key foundational benchmarks that evolution used to assert with regards to things concerning the age of the world and with things concerning the fossil evidence that says that human beings descended from apes. Am I correct in that statement?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's where we need to stop. So, what we're doing through these discussions is we're framing the issues. What Martin wants is a lot more data to understand how it is that Kevin came to certain of these conclusions. All right, but Martin, for him to get into all the data goes way beyond.
I'm not asking him to get into it. I just want all the links so I can go read a bunch of stuff. That's all I want. I don't need him to explain anything. Yeah.
Okay. My next section to this was going to say 3 books and just showing a certain portion that actually is showing that Darwin is going one way and reality is going another way.
Okay. Well, so your point is stay tuned, everyone, because now
can we have the book list?
Issues.
Yeah.
Can we have the book list? I just want the list of the books and the articles. I just want because I can.
I will be sending out. I'll send you the books.
Yeah.
And I'll send out everyone the links to those videos that I showed you, so you can see the whole explanation. Because he does go into a lot more stuff it's really juicy stuff for us to look at, because this guy is a Christian and he's going through Genesis and what's happening in the world now, and how much the flood is just answering so many. It's so exciting, guys. The flood, the literal flood, is answering so many questions. It's fantastic, and it shows many things like the young Earth as well.
Okay, so
millions of years. No.
Hang on a minute. So, everyone, the reason why this is important. Okay, some of you have gotten lost in the details. Some of you have gotten lost in the data. Some of you have gotten lost in Kevin's long sentences.
I'm sorry about that, guys. I get overexcited.
Some of you have gotten lost in the middle of my attempts at explanations. So what I would like to do, everyone, is make a few simple things that come out from this that hopefully will be helpful. The first thing is, and this comes from a conversation with Kevin earlier today on the phone. If there is compelling, uncontested evidence that human beings descended from apes and there was transitional species and all these kinds of things, then that seems in the minds of Kevin and me to undermine one of the key tenets of Christianity, which is that human beings were uniquely created by God. Adam from the dust of the earth, Eve from the rib of a man, and that the actual God who spoke the universe into existence stood around, fashioned the body, and then breathed life into the first man and woman when he breathed the breath of life into him. So the idea of evolution, as it is packaged in terms of all life that we know it came from a single cell, and then there was, an ancestor or a progenitor or whatever you want to call it. In other words, that we're all descended from something, and that something involves a chain of ape-like beings before we get to human beings. That goes against the Bible's statement of how humans were made, and it goes against the Bible's statement that God created all the creatures in a short period of time according to their kinds. Okay, be it ape, be it animal, be it whale, be it whatever. So we don't, but where people like Martin and Trimper Longman, my friend from Westminster Seminary, are coming from is we don't answer the issues of science or the questions of science with faith assumptions that come from the book of the Bible. We answer science with science. So then the question is, and I think this is a very important question for us to get into next week. Why is it that there are well-meaning evangelical Christians who believe that the Bible is the Word of God, who feel that the scientific evidence is conclusive, or at least convincing to them, about evolution with regards to the fact that human beings didn't come from Adam and Eve, they came from apes. So that's where we have to go. That's where we ultimately have to go. That is the most important part of this whole thing. Connected to it is the question of how old the earth is. But that isn't even as important as this key thing that I'm bringing up. The key thing that is the question of, is the scientific community now teaching us that we came from ape-like beings? Because if that's what it's teaching, then something is right and something is wrong. Either science is right and Genesis 1 and 2 are wrong, or Genesis 1 and 2 are wrong, and science doesn't have enough data, or they've corrupted what data is there to go towards some atheistic end. Am I right, Kevin?
Okay. Well, yeah, one point on that. Evolution depends on millions of years. Depends on it.
Okay,
Depends
so then
on it.
the question
So you can circumvent
Yeah.
that ape to man by proving or by giving evidence towards, which is more probable, is the fact that it is not millions of years, and that is what's happening. But there's two crucial things.
Okay,
One is the evolution process from evolving into a better, evolving to grow, genetics, and grow into an improving species. And one is the aging of the earth. If you get those two, everything else doesn't matter. Doesn't matter about the apes to man, doesn't matter about sea mammals, doesn't matter about the eye, doesn't matter about anything. If those two, if it's shown that the earth is not millions and millions and millions and 4.6 billion years old, then that would suffice to dump everything, and then we can work out the details later.
That's excellent. Okay, so now we have a better understanding of where the issues are. Next week we'll get into more of the details, more of the data, more of the stuff. Martin hopefully will have read everything that Kevin's read by next week.
No, there's no way. But so are we talking about the age of the Earth next week, or are we talking about the fossils pertaining to all of the transitional species between earlier hominid ancestors and current hominids?
Okay.
And apes?
I will go into a little bit about the geological column, because it's important that even scientists have assumed that was done right. And I'm asking.
So
I'm
just
asking Dad, I don't want to go into
what is the topic that we're going into?
Yeah,
what is the topic
Kevin, what are you going to address next week? Are you going to address how old the Earth is, or are you going to address whether we came from monkeys? You must answer the question, okay?
Help!
Before I have a heart attack.
Okay.
Answer.
I'm having fun. I'm having fun.
So am I. No, we're going to look at we can look at both. I'm going to show you two things: the age of the Earth. I'm not going to start going into apes and men. No. I'm going to go into the age of the Earth, and I'm going to go into why it is that we can't evolve from through millions of years. We can't.
Okay. Well, then we are going to deal with it, but not from a standpoint of the fossil evidence, but from a standpoint of the timing necessary and what you're going to say about the timing of the Earth.
I could put a third one in there, and I could go through the geological thing as well.
You're going to run out of time.
That has been debunked. I mean, even scientists, come on, Martin, you've got to see this. Even scientists saying, forget the fossils, it doesn't show anything. It really doesn't.
I'm happy to I'm completely happy to radically change my understanding of any theory, but I just need to know the books you're referring to.
Yeah, I can show you the book.
The journals. If the evidence is conclusive, then I'll change my opinion. But if the evidence isn't good, then I'm not going to change the consent. I'm not going going to change, and other scientists
Well,
won't change their consensus.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's best if I do the latter, the former, and that is the age of the Earth and why through millions of years we can't be evolving.
I
that's
think you could probably get through the age of the Earth fully in the time for next week. I don't know if I just, on the record, I just want to say that these topics take years to talk about because they took me years to learn about, and Kevin years to learn about.
This is a 15-year study.
It's hard to have short conversations about this, but I would say,
Well,
talking about the age of the Earth is probably a really good, because it's an underlying issue. It's an underlying issue to this whole thing. Like, that's what you're saying, is the age of the Earth argument is an underlying.
But the great news is, though, what I'm going to teach you about why it can't be evolved is already gone through and not contested. It's in the publications. So there's no contestant. They all agree. It's been agreed. So I think that's where we're.
Do you have the journal? Do you have the publication?
Yes.
Can you just make a document?
I'll pass you the books on that.
Okay, Martin, stop asking. Okay, he's gonna get it to you, because every time you say that, what I'm hearing is, Kevin, I don't believe you because you haven't presented the data yet. And it's
that's not what I mean at all. I'm just
I know, but that's
millennial
what I'm
with
hearing.
ADHD. Like, I want the link right now, please.
I know. And I'm trying to tell you,
I'm not questioning Kevin's point. I'm not trying to criticize his point at all. I'm just asking for the.
All right.
Like people telling me about candy bars, and I'm like, could I have the candy bar? Can you put it in my hand, please?
Martin. Okay. Martin, you've asked for this multiple times. Kevin has told you multiple times he's going to give it to you, but not on this phone call. All right.
Okay,
so please, dear Jesus, people. Okay. Now I'm, as the pastor, getting frustrated. Okay. Kevin, you're going to send Martin tomorrow a list of books and a list of journal articles that have informed your thinking, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then can you send it to me so we can give it to Mary S. and she can share it with everyone else?
I don't want to do that yet. I want to present the data next week. Martin can, because he's the scientist.
Okay, but then you'll do it after next week.
Yeah, because a scientist can read it the right way.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do it that way, and that's how we'll.
But I will send the videos that you've seen. They're very, very, very good.
Thank you, Kevin, for a very illuminating and provocative discussion.
Very provocative. I'm sorry about any excitement, overexcitement, and frustrations
on a provocative topic. So, and Martin, thank you for your careful, well-reasoned attempts to get into what's being said and figure out what's being said, and then respond to what's being said. We shall overcome, as the song says, but we're not there yet. We're still in the middle of the battle. So next week we're going to hear Kevin frame out these things, and then in relationship to the documents that he's going to share with us either this week and next week, we then will all have an opportunity to examine some of this source material ourselves. But let me take the time to close this in prayer and pray for some of these things. Lord, we thank you that tonight, as we've wrestled with some of these things, we're beginning to see that there's a lot going on in the discussions. There are faith commitments that people have or don't have. There's agendas that people either have self-consciously or they don't have self-consciously. And there are issues connected to the veracity of science to be able to figure out some of these things. And then there's the question then of what you've said in your word. So Lord, continue to give us wisdom that we might walk away from this discussion with more fruitful insight than we had before about how to help people for whom this subject might be a big obstacle to them coming to faith or staying in their faith. Lord God, we lift up those who are hurting. Lord, we ask that you would bless all those who are struggling in their health right now. Deliver us from the scourge of the coronavirus and help us to get well. Lord, help us to get well, not so that we will live for ourselves, but so that we will live to glorify you. So we thank you for Kevin. Thank you for the discussion we've had tonight. Thank you for Martin and his insight and pulling things out of us. And we pray, Lord, that we would persevere and we'd end up with a greater understanding of the subject than we had when we started. So, Lord, thank you for this evening in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 Okay, okay guys.